How would you define spiritual practice?
What is spiritual practice? Before we get into today's topic, I'd first like to hear your thoughts. What does spiritual practice mean to you?
To me, spiritual practice means taking one step forward each day toward becoming more peaceful and brighter.
Taking one step forward each day toward becoming more peaceful and brighter. That's good.
I've only recently begun practicing, so more than anything, I want to become free from the suffering I experience.
Becoming free from the suffering I experience. That is a definition many people can relate to.
To me, spiritual practice is life itself. Each day may seem to repeat itself, yet no 2 days are ever the same. Life itself keeps changing, little by little.
So, every day brings a little change. I assume you're talking about a positive kind of change.
To me, spiritual practice is living not in the past or the future, but in the present moment.
Our minds keep wandering into the past or the future. Spiritual practice is about bringing ourselves back to the present moment, little by little. That's a beautiful definition. Thank you for sharing your definitions of spiritual practice. Every one of your reflections is a teaching in itself. Although each of you defined it differently, every definition is true for the person who shared it.
How can we know whether our definition of spiritual practice is truly right?
The definition of spiritual practice may differ from person to person, and the definition each of us arrives at may be the right one for ourselves. However, there is one thing that is even more important. That is authenticity. Did the definition you shared come from your mind, or did it come from your heart? If it came from your heart, then it is the true answer for you. If not, no matter how convincing your definition may sound, it will be of little help to your practice. As people continue their Buddhist practice, many mistakenly come to believe that the definitions they have learned from books are their own. When asked, "What is spiritual practice?" most people answer, "It is cultivating the threefold training of ethics, meditation, and wisdom. It is practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. It is understanding the Four Noble Truths." Others say it is practicing the Six Perfections, cultivating the 5 spiritual faculties, working with a koan, or chanting the Buddha's name. There are countless definitions of spiritual practice, but which one is the right one? Is there a single definition that applies to everyone? No, there isn't. That is why authenticity matters most. No matter how convincing a definition may sound, without authenticity, it remains nothing more than intellectual knowledge. But if it is authentic, then it is the right answer for you.
Even though everyone defines spiritual practice differently, isn't the essence the same?
Yes, it is. The definition of spiritual practice may differ from person to person, but there is one common thread that runs through them all. That is suffering. Ultimately, spiritual practice is the process of becoming free from suffering. Let's see if that's really true by looking at the definitions you shared. Taking one step forward. If there were no suffering, would there be any reason to take that step? If you were already at peace and happy, why would you feel the need to move forward? Following the flow of your true nature. We do so because when we don't, life becomes tangled and difficult. seeking a life of truth. This, too, rests on the assumption that life feels empty and insecure. That is why the one common thread running through all spiritual practice is suffering. Even though none of you use the word suffering directly, it is present in every definition.
What about people who practice even though they don't feel they're suffering?
Some of you might say, "I'm not suffering right now." But when I speak of suffering, I'm not referring only to the emotional pain you happen to be feeling at this moment. Anyone who looks deeply into their own life will discover a sense of emptiness. You may not be suffering, but there is still a sense of emptiness. And if you don't feel that emptiness, it simply means you are absorbed in something that has temporarily made you forget it. We become so preoccupied with something that we're no longer present. In reality, that's how many people live. When we are completely absorbed in chasing success, we're so caught up in it that we don't even realize how much we're struggling. But what happens when we finally reach our goal? For a little while, we feel incredibly happy. But before long, a sense of emptiness returns, and we find ourselves chasing yet another goal. That's how most people live. At the very core of our existence is the ego, the sense of I. Once there is an I, and once the world appears before that I, we have no choice but to keep running. We keep running because we can't stay still. When we truly see into life, we come face to face with the truth that this is how everyone is bound to live. Can there really be anyone who is free from suffering? Life already contains suffering. That is why life is hard for everyone. When you come to see that, you naturally realize, life really is hard.
What if we look at life more positively? Can't we be happy?
There are people who make an effort to see the beauty in life. When they do, life can indeed seem beautiful in those moments. When you wake up in the morning, you pause to take in a bright, new day. The gentle breeze against your skin. The fresh scent of the forest. A warm conversation with someone you love. Even if they are not extraordinary, life is filled with simple moments of happiness. When we see the beautiful side of life, we can certainly be happy, and those moments of happiness are real. But before long, happiness begins to unravel. Happiness never lasts forever. Sooner or later, impermanence catches up with it. Then, in order to forget that impermanence, we find ourselves searching for something else to focus on. Happiness does exist, but behind it, there is always the shadow of emptiness and impermanence. That is why spiritual practice is not about chasing temporary happiness. It is about facing the suffering inherent in life just as it is, and walking the path that leads to complete freedom from that suffering.